This is it, Eagles fans. It all comes down to Week 18. Another beautiful Sunday afternoon at the Link for the season finale. A big-time NFC East matchup. It's a must-win for the Birds if they want the playoffs to run through Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts is back. This Eagles defense is roaring to go. Now let's get you set for kickoff. Welcome to the Kickoff Show, presented by Little Caesars. I'm Ella DiGiovanni, joined by Fran Duffy. When you think about training camp opening back in July, to think we're in January, it's Week 18, and there's a lot riding on this afternoon.
This is why they lift all those weights. All that work that goes into the spring and into the summer and training camp and mini camps, it all comes down to here. Week 18, the difference between the number 1 seed and the number 5 seed hangs in the balance here this afternoon at Lincoln Financial Field.
Well, before we get into it, we want to send our love to Damar Hamlin, the safety from the Buffalo Bills, who went into cardiac arrest on Monday night in the Bills game against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's been a hard week for all involved, of course, across the NFL. And we received excellent news on Friday that he is now breathing on his own, and he has made remarkable improvements in the road to his recovery. You'll see players here today warming up in Love for Damar shirts. It's been a week where kind of everyone was brought back down to reality and realizing these football players are just people.
And that's the thing, is that all 32 teams, all 32 locker rooms, all 32 fan bases affected by what we all witnessed on Monday Night Football with Damar Hamlin and the situation that played out from that point. And I think when you look at the human element, that's a veil that is not often lifted when it comes to the sport, when it comes to this entertainment industry. And being able to see guys like Miles Sanders finally be able to FaceTime with one of his best friends in life with the life-threatening injury that he sustained last Monday night. I just think that it's the human element, again, is something that we don't often talk about, and it's underreported, under-discussed, and hopefully coming out of this week, that's something that we do a little bit more to shed a light on. These guys that go on the field every single Sunday for our enjoyment and for our entertainment, so much more than that. And I feel like that's something we hope we can get out of it. But like you said, Ella, the great news that we've gotten in just these last couple of days, seeing his reaction, him watching the Buffalo Bills here against the Patriots today from his hospital room, and just seeing those signs of progress, really, really heartwarming. Yeah,
Miles Sanders spoke about his best friend in the locker room this week. There was no football questions asked to Miles Sanders this week. It was about Damar Hamlin, and he shared so much insight in who Damar is as a person. You'll see on the 30-yard line today that number 3 is highlighted, but he said, look, we talk every day on the phone. He said, this really shook me up, but of course he just feels so blessed to be able to talk to his best friend like we saw he was doing a little bit earlier here today on FaceTime. Well, let's go to the present situation here in Philadelphia, and that goes with the clinching scenarios we'll see today. All you need to know, Eagles fans, all it takes is a win. The Eagles win today, they win the NFC East, and they lock up that number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, familiar conversation, obviously, than what we have been talking about here over these last couple of weeks. But if the Eagles win, they've got the number 1 seed in the bag. You get home field advantage. You got everything that you went into the offseason hoping to achieve. That is still in front of this team. So go out, take care of business. Ella, we've seen the inactives. They're rolling here on the bottom of the screen. We know who's not playing for the Giants. We know who's going to be in the starting lineup for the Giants. This is a game that the Eagles can go out, take care of business, get this win, and then enjoy the weekend off next weekend, and sustain that home field advantage through the postseason.
When these teams last met in Week 14, the Eagles' offense rolled. They put up 48 points. Hurts connected with 9 different pass catchers. They got it done on the ground as well. It was a complete team performance.
Quarterback, running back, O-line, pass catchers,
you name it.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, everybody participating in that Week 14 victory up at the Meadowlands. And I think that that's the big thing, is not just reflecting on what just happened just 4 weeks ago, but just going back to last week, where that performance against the New Orleans Saints just left such a bad taste in everybody's mouth on that side of the football. All of those guys would like nothing more than to flush that and go into the playoffs off a great performance here at home against the division rival Giants.
Well, Eagles fans, you can take a deep sigh of relief because Jalen Hurts is back. He missed the past 2 weeks with that shoulder sprain he suffered in Chicago. The team went 0-2 in his absence. So not only is he making his return, but he's making his return in a must-win situation.
That's the thing. You alluded to that great performance by the Eagles against the Giants in Week 14. Well, Jalen Hurts was at the center point of that performance. It was one of the best pure drop-back pass performances of Jalen Hurts' career. He carved up the blitz. He was excellent on third down. He handled the pocket pocket extremely well. He made throws under pressure in critical situations. Just so impressive from Jalen Hurts in that game. And now you just want to see, hey, let's have one quick refresher here against the Giants, get this win, and go into the postseason. This Eagles offense, though, much better when QB1 is in the lineup.
I think it'll be interesting to see this coaching staff's plan of attack today for Jalen Hurts. It's a shoulder, right? And there's a lot of quarterback design runs in this playbook specifically for Jalen Hurts. Do we see much of that? Do they eliminate that from the plan today? Do they rely on the passing game? Is the deep ball going to be eliminated depending on how well his shoulder actually is doing? Obviously, he's good enough to go, but how far do they stretch him today, I think, is going to be interesting to watch.
And that's the thing I'm sure that they were talking about as a staff throughout the course of the week as they watched how Jalen Hurts was responding to the extra workload in practice on Thursday, on Friday, even on Saturday. How is he feeling? What are some of the things that will be available to us from a play calling standpoint, from a play design standpoint, as we go into this game against the New York Giants, which we know defensively, they're going to be depleted. A number of their big players inactive for this game. All those guys that are active, unlikely to see too much playing time here. I would expect you're going to see the deep reserves from the Giants for the large majority of this game. Now it's just a matter of the Eagles taking advantage of that fact.
Safe to say players were very excited to have number one back on the practice field. No one more than, of course, his best friend, A.J. Brown. Here's what he had to say about the return of QB1.
We all excited. We all excited to see him back, to see him doing his thing. He's locked in for sure. He definitely has a tempo about him today. Even in the walkthrough, he was telling guys to come on, hurry up, get going. So glad he's back.
As you bring in these offensive starters here, Jalen Hurts is good to go. Right tackle Lane Johnson is out for another week. Jack Driscoll will be playing in place of Lane Johnson. Now, of course, when you see all the inactives for the New York Giants, it's a good opportunity for Jack Driscoll to start trying to stack these starts because we do not know how long he will be playing in place of Lane Johnson.
Yeah, and I thought going back through the film last week against New Orleans, I know Cam Jordan, the star defensive end for the Saints, had 3 sacks, but I don't know if I'm putting all of that on Jack Driscoll. I thought he had a fine game, and you'll see if he can continue that level of play here against the Giants, and again, going up against the second-string defensive line for New York. And again, you're just trying to bounce one start after another and start to stack those up, as you mentioned. I would expect to continue more of the same here from Jack Driscoll and the rest of this Eagles offensive line.
Back in Week 14, Miles Sanders had a career-high 144 yards and 2 touchdowns that day. When we talk about the health of Jalen Hurts, who knows? Maybe they're going to really rely heavily on Miles Sanders, and with Miles Sanders also comes Boston Scott. It could be a big day for the Giant Killer himself, too.
Yeah, I think when you look at Miles Sanders, so much of his production came in the second half of that game. The Eagles ran for 65 yards, I believe it was, or 61 yards in the first half. Finished the day with over 260 yards rushing in that game. And so much of it came with 2 tight ends on the field. That'll be something to watch. I'm going to dip into one of the run schemes I think we could see a little bit later in the show, but I would expect some big plays from number 26, number 14, Kenny Gainwell, we see there, and of course the Giant Killer himself, Boston Scott. I would expect all 3 of these guys to be very active on the ground in this game.
Now, Devontae Smith has 3 straight weeks with 100-plus yards. This week at his locker, he was asked about this late-season surge that he has, the consistent performances he's been able to stack, and he said, look, I've just made the most of my opportunities. When they come, I've taken advantage. He said, but most importantly, I'm feeding off the energy of A.J. Brown. I think it's interesting to see how their relationship has developed over the course of the season. Before the season, so many unknowns how both of these wide receivers would get enough touches, how they would spread the ball out between the two. But I think they got themselves into quite a good rhythm here, Fran.
I think they're in pretty good shape at wide receiver, Ella. I think when you have 2 guys that are breaking individual records almost on a weekly basis at this point, we know A.J. Brown just about 9 yards away from breaking Mike Quick's single-season record here that has stood for about 40 years in Philadelphia. So A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, you have both of those guys, how they interact on a weekly basis on the field, but then also when they're on the field at the same time, on the same side, all the trouble that presents opposing defensive secondaries to contend with. I think that is one of the X factors here for this Eagles offense.
Now, this is the 3rd week Dallas Goedert is back in the mix, but the first time in 8 weeks, he and Jalen Hurts will take the field together. Now, before Dallas Goedert suffered that shoulder injury, those 2 had a good thing going. So I'm excited to see them reconnect here against the Giants.
Yeah, when Jalen and Dallas were both healthy, Dallas was one of the 2 or 3 most productive tight ends in the NFL, regardless of what metric you looked at. So I think ultimately you look at those 2 guys back on the field for the first time today, I would expect that maybe there will be some growing pains, but it would not shock me at all if they just picked up right where they left off. And so that's something to watch here in this game. We know that no matter who the Giants have out there from a player standpoint, Wink Martindale, they're going to play man coverage. And so you're going to see man-to-man against A.J. Brown, against Devontae Smith, and yes, against that guy, number 88, Dallas Goedert. The Eagles, last time the Eagles played the Giants, there were a number of really impressive plays from two tight end sets, especially in the run game. I would expect Dallas Goedert to make an impact in that phase of the offense as well.
We talk about the impact of the rushing game possibly here today. The Eagles offense is top 5 in rushing. And so when you think about it in the context of what this offensive line has opened up for the run game this year, they'll be up against a Giants defense that is at the bottom of the league in stopping the run. They're allowing over 5 yards per carry. They're allowing over 144 rushing yards per game. When you think about the battle up in the trenches today, Fran, I mean, this offensive line is going to have kind of their pick.
That's the thing, is that, no Dexter Lawrence, who is a Pro Bowl defensive tackle for the Giants, he's inactive. The other guy next to him, a former Pro Bowler, Leonard Williams, he's inactive for this game. And so one matchup I do want to take a look at, one guy that I feel like is playing some of his best football here, Ella, Landon Dickerson, the second-year guard, left guard out of Alabama a couple years ago. He was just named to the Pro Bowl a few weeks ago, and I feel like since that point, his play has even gotten up to another level. He is just playing so well. We see him there with his buddy Jordan Mailata. I think when you look at Landon Dickerson, especially in the run game, he is a guy to watch here in this football game.
For New York, Davis Webb is the starting quarterback today for the Giants. Now, when we received that news, I got into my research. I wanted to be well prepared for the show today. And he's never completed a pass in the National Football League. He was activated off of the Giants practice squad here this week to be the starting quarterback. So when he's up against the number 1 defense in the NFL, right here in Philadelphia, who ranks first in passing, sacks, and yards per play, he's definitely going to have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, no question. I think the big thing, though, is we have to remember that quarterbacks can come out and can surprise you at any given point. Davis Webb was a 3rd-round pick just a few years ago out of Cal. He succeeded Jared Goff in that offense. It was very productive for 1 year. So, while he has not done anything in the NFL up to this point, he's got some arm talent. We've seen young quarterbacks come in and in their first start make some plays. Remember Jarrett Stidham just a week ago taking the San Francisco 49ers to the limit in overtime for the Las Vegas Raiders. The Eagles themselves have had a checkered past against backup quarterbacks with the last name Webb, right? So you don't want to take this guy too lightly, but certainly an advantage for the Eagles not having to go up against Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor.
I will say, being in the locker room this week, the energy was high. They are not taking this team lightly, just from the conversations I've had with players this week. The music was bumping, they were locked in, they were ready to go, but they also were taking it just like any other week. Even Dallas Goedert says it's just another game. I think maintaining that level head with energy high, but also not changing anything in terms of preparation. But today we're also going to be tracking the sacks. The Eagles need 5 sacks to break the record for most team sacks in a season. Now, I wrote about this for quite a few weeks now, and defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon talks about how he doesn't consider sacks a winning stat. He went on to clarify that this week. He said how the game is played today, there are 2 stats this organization hangs their hat on: takeaways and explosive plays. But knowing what you have to do as a defense to affect the game in a positive way, affecting the quarterback is up there. He even went on, Fran, to talk about how you need all 11 guys to get to the quarterback, to affect the quarterback. And sacks are just kind of something that comes of that. It's the end result of that.
And that's the thing, is that to me, pressure is more important than sacks. Yes, sacks are important. You want to be able to get the quarterback down behind the line of scrimmage, but it's tough to be able to get there if you don't get pressure. And one of the things that I love, when we talk about sacks being a full team stat, the Eagles right now, we know, all year round, they have been the number 1 or number 2 team in pressure rate, in total amount of pressures over the course of the season. This defensive line has been crushing it. But if you look at overall time to pressure, average time to pressure, they've been hovering right around just outside the top 10, sometimes up at number 9, number 8. So what does that tell me, Ella, when you look at the numbers? Yeah, they're getting a lot of pressure, but it doesn't happen fast, which means you need those guys on the back end doing their job. And that's when you look at guys like TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps and Avonte Maddox when he's been healthy, certainly the corners and Big Play Slay and James Bradberry, everybody on the back end doing their job. I know even last week, looking at that 7-sack performance against New Orleans, so many of those sacks, you would say, yeah, great job by the defensive front. They were able to get home. They win their one-on-ones, or 2 guys working together on the rush. But that does not end up in a sack if the back 7 does not do their job. It shows up time and time again on film with this defense.
This team is the only team in the NFL with 5 players with 30 or more quarterback pressures, one of those guys being Fletcher Cox, who has 34. He's an 11-year vet. He's been part of a lot of defenses here in Philly. Here's what he shared about the current group.
We were lifting weights this morning. I was just talking to the guys like, man, I was just telling them that how special this group is. How everybody just is different, and everybody's flying around making plays, and nobody's ever looking at the next person to make the play. I always want to be the guy to make the play. I don't want to wait on Grave to make the play, or Haas, or Sweaty, or BG, or Sue, or anybody those guys to make the play. I want to be the guy to make the play, to spark the guy, to get the group going. But sometimes it's always somebody else.
In honor of Robert Quinn being activated from IR this week, we have to revisit BG's sack celebration from last week. Leading into Week 17, BG said if he breaks double digits, he has a special celebration that was inspired by one Quinn did back in 2021 in Chicago against the Giants. Well, he got number 10, so here we go. Here was the sack celebration. Looks pretty good, Fran.
It looks great, and the angle that we get is so important here for Brandon Graham's angle, because I actually got some clarity on this week. This week, talked with some people in the organization. Here is the scope of this celebration. You're spinning the record, so you watch BG here. You can't see that with Quinn's angle here. Spinning the record and then breaking it. Awesome celebration. We were a little confused, like, is this the celebration that he's looking at? And now getting that clarity, totally get it. Awesome celebration there from both Robert Quinn and from Brandon Graham.
I love it. Fran doesn't only break down plays, he also breaks down celebrations.
It's the hard-hitting.
You got to put that on your LinkedIn, on the resume, and the Twitter bio. Let everyone know.
That's all on the Emmy reel.
That side-by-side comparison was presented by Ponley Hockey. Well, here's a reminder while we're here talking about BG, Eagles fans to vote for Brandon Graham for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Head to Twitter and use the hashtag WPMOY challenge, followed by Graham or his handle at Brandon Graham 55. Well, as we bring in the defensive starters here, we mentioned Robert Quinn being activated off of IR. Avonte Maddox remains out with the toe injury. Josh Sweat, he is out with the neck injury. But safety, CJ Gardner-Johnson, he is activated off IR after suffering that lacerated kidney. It's kind of crazy, Fran. He missed 5 games, and he still is tied for most interceptions in the National Football League.
That's a crazy stat. Real quick, Fletcher Cox, just intense breaking this defense.
He's
bring
not
that entire
messing
team
around.
down. No, those guys are not messing around going into this football game. But yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson, I'm really interested to see what he looks like here coming back into this Eagles defense. Is he going to be playing more in the slot, or is he going to be playing more in that traditional safety spot that we saw earlier on from him this season? I do think it's notable, the starting lineups we just showed, that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was not listed as the starting safety. Reed Blankenship was. So does that mean we're going to see Chauncey in the slot or not? That's something I'll be watching here on the opening drive.
Well, Hassan Reddick, he's a sack and a half away from tying Nick Bosa for NFL's leader in sacks. I'm kind of running out of things to say about him, Fran, because he has been so consistent. He has been a game changer, a critical piece to this defensive unit this year.
He's been awesome. Everything that the Eagles hoped to get from Hassan Reddick in this defense, they have gotten. And it's not just getting after the quarterback. We actually had Eagles outside linebackers coach Jeremiah Washburn this week on Eagles game plan, breaking down not just Hassan as a pass rusher, but what he's done against the run, consistently taking 2 blockers away on the edge, pulling tight ends, pulling blockers, wide receivers trying to crack down on him from the outside. Shows up time and time again with him on film. I love watching number 7 play. It's just so awesome to see a Philly kid come back after a few years in the league and have this level of play for his hometown team. Love what Hassan Reddick has meant for this Eagles defense here in year number 1.
He was just vibing. He was rocking out. But to get a better idea of how unselfish this defensive group is, Fletcher Cox, when asked about the breaking the sack record, he said, I'd rather have the win than the sack. And then we asked Hassan Reddick about the numbers he's put up in the sack department, and he said, look, I'm happy that I'm having the year that I'm having, but right now I'm worried about being the best that I can be and helping my team win. That's the focus of this defensive group. The numbers are great. They're breaking records left and right. They'll go down as one of the best defenses in Eagles history, but they just want to win here today, Fran.
And that's the thing, is that there are a number of guys in that defensive line room in particular that have won a Super Bowl. Certainly Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, and Ndamukong Suh, he brings that Super Bowl experience to that group as well. So when you have players like Hassan Reddick, who has never played in a playoff game, you have some of these other young players that were not here in 2017, to have those guys to lean on and say, yeah, like this individual accomplishments, even the team sack record, that's great, but it does not matter if you don't go to the playoffs, if you don't win those first couple games, you don't get to the Super Bowl, and if you don't hoist that Lombardi trophy. That ultimate team goal, that is number 1 in all those guys' minds.
All right, Fran, we're inching closer to kickoff. Which are 3 things to watch?
Well, we're going to start off here with, I think, looking at the third down offense. And it was something that if you go back to Week 14, this Eagles offense was outstanding on the most important down in football, the third down. Jalen Hurts, the run game, the pass catchers, everybody. Last week, Not so much. Was probably their worst third down performance of the season here last week against the Saints. So bouncing back from that will be big. Number 2, beat the blitz. We know Wink Martindale, doesn't matter who's out there. Ella, you and I could be out there playing corner. He's going to play man coverage, and he's going to send the house. So one-on-one battles for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Jalen Hurts has to find a way to beat the blitz. And then number 3, this is a full team stat, turnover margin. That was a winning formula for this team all throughout this season. The last few weeks, it has not gone their way, but if you got to win the turnover margin, that means creating big plays on defense, protecting the football on offense. You can't win if you turn the ball over 4 times. If the Eagles are able to protect the ball and take it away, that'll take care of business, come away with a win here this afternoon.
All right, well, with that, we're going to head over to Lincoln Financial Field, where our Eagles insider Dave Spadaro joins us live. Dave, Jalen Hurts is a go. What do you expect from QB1 today?
Well, I feel like there's so much energy. As soon as he came into the field area, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Obviously, let me just mention this also for those of you who don't know it. I don't know if you mentioned the Saints lost today, so that's a good way to start the day. But I expect to see Jalen Hurts. I expect to see timing and chemistry with his receivers. I expect to see the Eagles get off to a much faster start than they've gotten off to. Certainly against the Saints, not getting your first down until the very end of the first half, unacceptable. But listen, I think the Eagles really want to get Jalen to play with confidence, to play fast, to play turnover-free football, to play like Jalen Hurts. And one other thing, just get down. No need to take a hit in this Week 18 game. The playoffs are not too distant in the future. But look, I think this is the full game plan. I don't think they're coming out here to say, Jalen, you can do this, but not do this. They know the importance of this game. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are taking this all for granted because the Giants are playing so many backups. You can't go into a football game like that. So you're going to see the full Jalen, and that's why he wore the T-shirt, I'm back.
The players know this is a must-win. What is important to watch from a defensive standpoint today?
You know, Fran mentioned it just a little while ago here, the fact that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not listed as a starter. Is he now the nickel cornerback? This is a defense that has lived with the takeaways, and those takeaways have just not been there in abundance in these last 4 weeks. Coincidence without C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Possibly, but probably not. So I want to see the Eagles, first of all, put a lot of pressure on the Giants at the line of scrimmage. Don't give easy completions, but I think takeaways come in bunches, and it's really important to start that right now, get that momentum rolling, and get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, get some of the rust knocked off. So let's see if Robert Quinn has some juice coming off the IR. Just a good performance, and maybe most important, because we saw it last week, right? A great saxophone, that holding the last note, like everybody was fired up, and then the Saints came on the field, and once again, the Eagles defense giving up a first drive possession where there were points on the board, this time a touchdown, a 9-minute drive. Eagles cannot start that way, so it is really important here to see the Eagles defense start fast, be aggressive, and take the football away today. And let's get ready for the bye week.
All right, good stuff, Dave. That was your Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro, live from Lincoln Financial Field. All right, Fran, last one of the regular season. What do you got for us for your Rico Extra Point?
Well, I think the big thing is going to be this Eagles run game. And Ella, we talked about earlier how Miles Sanders and how he had such a huge game against the Giants the last time these two teams played. And one of the big runs in that game, counter. And this is the traditional way that you run counter. It's a misdirection run. You're trying to get the defense to go one way, and then you're going to go out the back door. So you watch here, you got a tight end to the left side. Quarterback is under center. Again, this is the traditional way to run counter. The running back steps towards the tight end and then goes back the opposite way. There are also going to be 2 blockers coming from that other side. You get a pulling guard, and then you get that tight end who's going to wrap around. So you get extra blockers up to the second level and also kicking out that defensive end. You got a double team at the point of attack as well. The Eagles run a number of iterations of this with Jalen Hurts in the pistol, backing away from the center. That's where the quarterback run game can become more prevalent there. You've got more depth to be able to read the defensive end. You add those blockers into the right, and Jalen Hurts, he can either hand it off to Miles Sanders or keep it. You also could put Miles Sanders next to Jalen Hurts in the shotgun. And again, that's a different iteration, a different wrinkle on this run scheme. You still get those 2 blockers, the left tackle and the left guard, and it could be Jalen Hurts keeping the football on these counter plays. All these these different iterations were so big for the Eagles the last time these two teams played. Even you go back to last year, Ella, the Eagles ran a ton of counter against the Giants. I remember Jordan Mailata coming through and absolutely smushing the defensive lineman in the hole. I would keep an eye out for Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata as pullers here on these counter runs against the Giants defense. Just something to watch here in this football game.
The Kickoff Show is delivered by Little Caesars, proud partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Order online during the Pizza pregame and get it delivered or pick up in store in the Pizza Portal. Pizza. All right, settle in for a wild afternoon of football. Eagles fans, following the game, be sure to join us right back here for the postgame show presented by Rico. Can the Eagles come out victorious, win the NFC East, clinch the #1 seed, kick back, and enjoy the regular season finale? Thank you so much for watching, and go Birds.